So you're much better playing in the NFBC, I found, in the second tier. That's where you get the smallest market closer. In home leagues, I found that playing the bottom often helps. That it's quantity over quality, as Ruvain said, and you just sit back, wait, grab some bargain bin stuff. If you get 4 of them, hope that 2 work out, and you'll play the waiver wire not more than anybody else. And that's how I would do it.
I find it the opposite in the home league, strangely enough, but I do agree with you on yes. I find that people want to be the one who got that closer for $1 who gets 35 saves. And they will unfortunately
the two positions that get the most fab money usually are the prospective closers and the guys who get steals. So in most leagues, that's the place where people say, you know what, my closers are not cutting it anymore. I have these low tier closers, so I want to spend more on the waiver wire because to compensate for the fact that I didn't pay enough during draft day.
Yep. I will, Ariel, I will agree that in NFBC, I do also find that that's where the bargains are. I mean, even if I look at the early ADP, column A, we mentioned his name a minute ago, Rafael Montero, Nick Anderson, if you think he's going to get saves this year. I mean, those are all players who are going near around 16, 17 from the looks of it, if I'm doing the rough math.
Well, the Rays are a different story. I have the ball boy projected for 4 saves on the Rays, by the way.
Each of them is going to get 4 saves. They're going to split it 11 ways.
I mean, can you really legitimately? It has to be that each Rays closer is. Are they even draftable? I mean, Nick Anderson is because of the strikeouts. I like Peter Fairbanks. I think he's legit, so maybe him. But I can't see myself paying the market value for Rays closers because you're buying a closer for the saves, and I'm not confident that they're going to get them. Are you?
I'm not either. As a matter of fact, I could see the leader of the team being fortunate to get 10 to 12. And maybe it's Diego Castillo for all we know. It could be anybody on that team. No, I agree with you. Anderson's probably not the best. I'm quickly scrolling what the ADP numbers were there, and he was outside the top 150. But yeah, the Cardinals guys, Hicks, Gallegos, if it's one of them. Greg Hollins hovering in the 280s.
Right. And as everyone can hear, every league plays differently, so the concept of market premium is specific to your league. If you know that your league mates do something, well, then you have a different story, and you have to play your market premium aspect differently. Let's move on to starting pitchers. Tristan, how do you feel about the elite starting pitchers? Do you feel that there is a market premium for them, and is it worth paying? What about middle pitchers? Where do you find market premium in the starting pitcher role?
I feel like the only places I see the market premium there are in the NFBC, as you had mentioned, and in points leagues. And that includes my home leagues, but especially in our game, the points leagues pay an almost absurd premium for starting pitchers. And understandably so, people often will just chase the total points leaderboard from the previous year, and starting pitchers dominate that based on the nature of our scoring. Beyond that, I actually think people are a little timid to spend on starting pitchers, and I'm willing to take that chance. I think as the workloads of starters decline these days. I mean, we had, 40? Yeah, we had 40 ERA qualifiers last year, and the 3 years before it were the 3 lowest in a full year since 1960. I know there were many fewer teams around in the league then. I want the guy who's going to give you ace numbers and gives you the innings behind it. That's really the key here, is that you're getting more volume from that guy. It's having more of an impact compared to your replacement level pitcher. So yeah, I actually am in, and I find almost always I'm in on one of the first 5 pitchers in practically every league except maybe the points.
You agree with that, Ruvain?
I actually agree. I mean, if you look at the starting pitchers from last year, if the top pitchers, the pitchers that people paid a premium for, which were Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, Bieber, Cole, all those guys averaged more than 10 Ks per 9 innings. There were 14 pitchers in leagues last year that averaged more than 10 Ks per 9. So you have those top guys. They stabilize your whip. They stabilize your ERA. They're usually on good teams. Usually, I'm not talking about deGrom, in the last couple of years getting wins. But these top guys are usually worth the premium. But then you also have the other guys who are on this list of the top K per 9 over from last year. You have Dinelson Lamet. You have Aaron Nola. You have Brandon Woodruff. All these guys were in the second tier that boosted up their value because they were getting the strikeouts. They were getting almost close to a 1A type pitcher, and you don't necessarily have to spend on the premium for the rest of the pitchers. Now, it depends on what your plan is going into the draft. If you're planning on getting a 1 and you are, or 2 1s, or a 1 and a 1A, it's all going to depend on how you place your money elsewhere, or how you place your picks elsewhere, because you have to make sure that you don't overpay for these people, because sometimes you'll end up overpaying, and then again, there's no profit in that.
Yeah, so I agree with Tristan here. A couple of years ago, talking 7-8 years ago, you wouldn't be caught. You'd be crazy if you bought a pitcher before the 3rd round. And if you, there's a lot of people who said, I'm not picking a pitcher until the 7th round. And you'd be crazy to pick any pitcher before then. Now, if you go, especially in the high money NFBC leagues, if you don't come out of the first 3 rounds with a pitcher, or even 2 these days, you're crazy. Everybody is going up. And there's a good reason for that. I had a piece up on Fangraphs a couple of years ago that showed that the ace pitchers are really not risky investments. They have the highest probability to return the bulk of their value. So their value is warranted. So there is a market premium on that, because a lot of the projections do not incorporate risk, right? It doesn't tell you how likely a person is to make their projection, but if you incorporate a risk-adjusted valuation, there really is no market premium. You should be buying a pitcher early, and everybody else does. You just want to not, you don't want to pick number 1 overall. You don't want to forego incredible hitting stats that you can't get elsewhere, but it is justified. What I find that is the incorrect market premium is the 2nd tier and 3rd tier and 4th tier pitchers, your SP2, 3, 4s that have shown a historic terrible success rate. You are far better off not overpaying for pitchers in the whole middle range and drifting to the bottom and picking up a couple of number 5s, making sure you have a couple of 1s. And of course, since you're paying that big premium above, since you're paying that first round value of a pitcher, well, you're sort of playing stars and scrubs so that your overall balance of pitching isn't out of whack. But I would not pay any market premium for what anybody is doing in the whole middle. Agree, Tristan?
I do agree with that. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I've been a big proponent, and granted, this comes a little bit from the more shallower, the general mixed leagues, even the 15-teamers, of getting your ace, getting the ace early, paying the premium, and having them serve your anchor, and then going with nothing but dart throw type bargains, even below the 3rd tier type of pitchers, guys who are mid to late rounds. And if you hit on 2, 3 of those and you cycle out any of the others as you see opportunities out there, if you can hit on 2 or 3 of those as big names, we mentioned a couple of them, Woodruff last year, Corbin Burns, another example from last year. If you get a couple of those, you're going to be in some really good shape pitching wise. Right.
Let's talk about catchers. Now, catchers, as we mentioned earlier in the show, have the added thing of what is truly a positional scarcity, right? If you're playing in a 10-team, 2-catcher league, there are 20 catchers taken. The 20th best catcher is not as good as the 20th best shortstop that you might have to roster. So when you're paying for a catcher, you're not paying for a catcher stats. You're paying for the privilege of not getting the worst catcher, right? You don't want to end up with crappy production at the bottom. You got to pay something so you get less crappy production, and that essentially is what positional scarcity is, and it really is a true thing in catcher. Not with saying that exists, what do we think about the catcher position in terms of market premium? Do we think that in leagues, people are evaluating catchers correctly and paying the right positional scarcity? Or are they paying too much of a market premium? Are they paying not enough and giving you a discount? What do you find, Tristan, in leagues?
I find that people are getting smarter about it, and that's probably because the position has become so awful over the past couple of years. There just really aren't any good catchers. I'm trying to rapidly get you the number of how many were positive earners in ESPN leagues last year. I think it was 6 or 7. If I can get that, I'll tell you what the number was. It's
about right.
It's not enough to even fill a 10-team league. And by the way, that's a 1-catcher league. So a couple things. One, the league context is huge at this position. As you said, if it's a 15-team mixed league, even that's 30 catchers in a 2-catcher league. So it is a little bit about avoidance of terrible, terrible numbers. I mean, you could be looking at a catcher who plays enough to damage you in terms of batting average. You get a guy with 300, 350 PAs, he bats 220. That's going to hurt your team quite a bit. So I endorse avoiding that the more you're diving into that catcher pool. But otherwise, if it's one of the shallow ones, and a lot of leagues are shifting towards 1 catchers, even 12-team, 15-team mixed leagues, if you're going in that direction, I'm not paying the premium at all. I won't pay up. I'm seeing people less or increasingly or decreasingly paying the premium to get a premium catcher. I'll take a good guy if I think he slips in the draft, but not giving up my top 100 pick just to get a catcher and avoiding the 15th best player out in the league. I think I can do pretty well there and just scour the waiver wire during the year.
All right, Ruvain, your thoughts?
I never pay premium for a catcher, and that's our philosophy. Usually, when we draft catchers, whether it's a 2-catcher league or a 1-catcher league, these catchers, they're so interchangeable. Last year, according to CBS rankings, Gary Sanchez was a 17th ranked catcher. Now, does that mean that everyone didn't value their catchers correctly? No, he just had a very bad year. Is he going to bounce back? I don't know. Are you willing to pay the premium on a Gary Sanchez who may go either as a 4th or 5th catcher and hope that he does better? Last year also, Salvador Perez, he was coming off of an injury. He was coming off of Tommy John surgery. People were paying the premium for him. I was not willing to do that with that risk involved with it, especially because once you get past the top 3-4 catchers, they're all basically interchangeable. You're just trying to avoid the worst batting average. That's all you're trying to do. So I don't see a reason to pay the premium for a catcher.
So Mike Podhorzer told me a couple of years ago that what he finds is in 1-catcher leagues, everyone is placing a market premium. That everyone's overvaluing catchers. In 1-catcher leagues, just go to the bottom. Just with your last pick, just take a catcher. It doesn't matter who it is, and everyone is just paying $3 a couple of rounds too much. But in 2-catcher leagues, he finds that it's the opposite, that people don't understand the positional scarcity correctly, and they're underpaying. I'll say that in the 2-catcher leagues that I play in, which are the high-money NFBC leagues, I think that the very top catcher, and we'll talk a little bit about JT Realmuto in a second, that could be overpriced. But the second-tier catchers, we're talking about catcher number 4 through 8, let's say, has actually a nice market discount. That the positional scarcity is not properly taken into account in that. I guess people think they can just get away with $1 catchers, which is fine. But in terms of valuation, the second-tier catchers give bang for the buck. So if you are in a 2-catcher league, I've found that take that second-tier catcher and also take one of those $1 catchers in the end, but at least you've gotten some value of the position. Now, the question is JT Realmuto, who's sort of on an island. I think that anybody who's analyzing any fantasy baseball this year for catchers will tell you that Realmuto is the number 1 catcher, and he's significantly above replacement and probably will do about the same this year. Do you think, Tristan, that he's a guy because of that, if we think he's so reliable, to take extra early at a position, especially in a 2-catcher league?
It really depends how you define early on that. I mean, if he's going within the first 50 picks, I'm a little hesitant to do that, but you could catch my ear. I might listen to it in the 2-catcher leagues. The advantage that Realmuto gives here, and this goes back to our playing time discussion. I feel like we constantly go back to this. Realmuto gives you positive production fantasy-wise, and he does it while giving you a lot more playing time than any other catcher does. It's actually one of the wider gaps of any position out there. That's why I will happily take him if he slips. So, for example, I'd say if it's a 2-catcher league and he's out there at pick 58 overall, I'm probably going to be taking him very seriously at that point. I'd consider that a bargain. He's not being priced up. I think you can make the case he's a top 40 pick potentially in a 2-catcher 15-plus team mixed, or if it's an NL with 12 teams, 2 starting catchers. I do think he gives you that kind of impact.
Well, how about this question? If you're at the 50th pick, 15-team league, 2 catchers, and Realmuto's out there, and Liam Hendriks, let's say he's a top closer. The top closer's out there. Who would you be more willing to take, the top closer or the top catcher?
The top catcher in that case. Yeah. But it's just because of him, not because of the position.
Not because of any other reason. Okay.
Right. It's just because it's Realmuto.
Right. I'll say that for the same reason Salvador Perez in the past has gotten a lot of playing time. He just chugs it out every day and plays, I'm not going to say 162 games, but quite a bit. Ruvain, is he fully recovered now? And you think he'll be able to catch a good bulk of games this year again?
Yeah, I think he's fully recovered. He had 150 at bats last year, which is of the top 5 or 6 catchers. He had that's pretty up there. They also have him playing first base a little bit. I don't know how much that's going to happen again this coming year, but I mean he hit 11 home runs. He batted 333. He hit for average. He had 32 RBIs. He scored 22 runs. So his numbers were up there last year coming off the injury. Now, I'm actually going to speak about this when we get to the injury update about how players do when they come back from Tommy John surgery, because he's on a pedestal by himself.